Okay, we're live. We're live. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you to everyone who's tuning in live with us here in the stream and online and on Facebook and on YouTube and everywhere where we go live. Thank you so much. My name's Matt Bailey. I'm the National Ambassador for the Scotch Malt Whisky Society here in Australia. And we're, of course, experiencing all the shutdowns and all the closures of all of our events and everything. And I have on the stream with me here tonight the SMWS Global Ambassador, John McCheyne, who's tuning in live from Scotland tonight, or this morning in his case. What time is it over there, John? What's going on? How are you?
It's 10 a.m. 10 a.m. I'm fine. It's a pity I've ran out of my whiskey for breakfast bottling.
It's so good to have you on the stream. And last time we caught up was actually in person in May last year for the festival. Well, it was fun. In Campbelltown, of all places, of course.
That's right.
At the Ardshiel. What a memory. That was great. Hi, both from David Taylor and hello from Rob Akers. Good to see you all. And thanks to everyone who's tuning in. Haley, Lee, Hayden, Ivan, Steve, David, Lachlan. Fantastic to see so many people joining in to have a chat with myself and John McCheyne. So, John, let's start off. First of all, do you have a dram in hand? Is it too early for that? Or I mean,
I've got a couple of meetings coming up, so I don't have a dram in hand. I'm going to stick to water.
Okay. I might have a beachcomber in a moment, but I'll start this off first. So, first of all, I just want to again thank you for taking your time to chat with us tonight, to chat with the Australian members. Those who don't, we arranged a tasting with John in person for Melbourne and a smaller one for Sydney as well, coming up, which would have been the 1st and 3rd, I think, of May. Coming up would have been, next week almost. So, unfortunately, with all the COVID and everything, that had to get postponed. But we do hope to have you back here again soon.
Great stuff.
So let's start off. Let's start off with some questions. So I think what our members would love to hear from you to start with is where does your journey in whiskey begin? Where does your passion begin?
Great stuff. I way back in 1983 in May, funnily enough, the last week in May, before festivals, before visitor centres, before malt whiskey was such a big thing as it is now, me and two friends and the three girls visited Islay. And we had a beautiful week there, and we turned up at Lafroig one day, and we tapped the door, and it was answered by the Lafroig security man, John Calder, Big John Calder. And we said, can we do a tour? And he said, we don't do tours, son, go away. But we got chatting to him, and it turned out he was a retired Glasgow policeman, and he knew my father, not from his work as a Glasgow policeman, but from a membership of a bowling club or something. So John took us in, did the tour. We went to the warehouse. We tasted some single cask. We thought, John, that is wonderful. Where can we get that? And he said, well, you can't buy that. We don't sell single cask. It all gets mixed together for our proprietary sort of expressions. So we thought, you big tease. And then a few months later, I discovered there was a society forming in Edinburgh, specialising in single cask, single malt. So I was very quick to join. So I was a member for a long time, always loved Scotch whisky. And in 2007, the Society were looking to expand their members tasting programme around the countries in the UK. And I applied and was asked to do tastings in my local area in the south of England. And it just kind of grown from there. I used to have a real job as well. Don't have a real job anymore. So now I'm doing it. Last 7 years probably, I've been doing some stuff globally for SMWS as well as in the UK. And that's kind of how it all happened. It all goes back to that meeting with Big John Calder in Lafroig on Islay 37 years ago.
Wow. So you said that was 1983.
Yes.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's like your history with it dates back to the beginnings of the society as well, like you say.
Yes, yes. And I probably wouldn't have actually paid much attention to the formation of the society had it not been for that trip that day in Lafroig. when John Calder introduced us to single cask, single malt. Prior to that, we were drinking the well-known few malts that were around back then and blends.
And do you remember your first ever society cask?
My first ever society cask, would you believe, was 1.1. And I had the great pleasure of tasting that again last year when Pip did a special tasting with a archive bottle that we had of 1.1. Wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw some photos coming through from members in the UK for that. It looked like something very special. But
because of that very special day all those years ago in 1983, my favourite, the distillery of my heart is 29.
So you're a big 29 fan?
Yes.
But you also like your peated whiskies from sort of everywhere.
Oh, yes. Oh, no, I like all of the whiskies, like all of the range, like all of the variety. But there is a moment when I just think a 29 just suits the mood and the moment and takes me right back to where it's made.
Yeah. Do you still scout out some of the 29s?
I think drinking whiskey is an emotional thing. It's not just a practical, mechanical thing. It's an emotional thing.
Yeah, that's that. And there's obviously like this. I always like to associate certain casks and certain profiles with certain memories. And so obviously that memory of Lefroy Distillery stands out for you.
Sure. It certainly does. It certainly does. You know that our memory sense is in our limbic system in our brain, which is where our memory is as well. And that's why so often people relating a flavour and aroma to a memory, because they're actually very closely linked in the brain. I was telling you earlier, Matt, about this one. This is a bottle of 3.200. Now, 3.200, this was the first distillery to reach the 200 cask. And I was so pleased for them. This is another Islay distillery that I bought two. One to drink and one just to have on my shelf on display. Drank both of them. Bought another two, same reason. One to drink, one for the shelf on display. Drank both of them. Society eventually gave me a present of this one when they heard the story, but that's gone now as well, unfortunately. I just keep it for the memory.
So you managed to completely go through 5 bottles from that one cask. That's very
yeah.
That's amazing. I do love the 3s as well, and we've actually, that was the whole idea of your visit in May, was to it was part of the facial, part of the Campbelltown Malts Festival.
Sure.
Tasting those casks, and if we're doing that right now, I was showing you just before we started that the one of the festival casks I'm holding in my hand right now, cask 7.233, a syrupy sweet tale of romance that's available in May Outturn. So that's the first preview anyone's seen of it right here, right now. So your journey started back with your association with 29, and then you said you started working with the society in 2007.
Yes.
And what did the society look like to you in 07 compared to how it looks now? Because I mean, we're talking sort of, it's a decade ago.
Yeah, 2007, we weren't quite so well spread internationally as we are now. We were a members club, of course. We've always been a members club, and the local tastings I did were for members around the area where I kind of lived. But the membership back then, and the demographic was different. It tended to be older males. And over the 13 years, that's changed. Younger people, lots more women. If you looked at the split in the last, say, 8 to 10 years, it would be remarkable compared to what it was back then. And I think that the culture of connoisseurship, which now exists in the whiskey world, was just kind of developing back then. And I think members enjoyed the whiskey, but they were beginning to learn about different distilleries they perhaps hadn't heard of before, because you couldn't get a proprietary bottle in a store. So until today, where members are actually actively involved with it. They're very interactive through areas like this. They ask lots of questions. They investigate lots of the bottlings we make from distilleries, which perhaps we haven't seen so much of in the last 30 odd years, you know. So it's a whole variety of experience. I think it's bringing more people in. And also, of course, we've now spread to 25 countries or so around the world. Back then, I think it was America and Japan only, and maybe Australia as well, actually. But now we're in Asia, we're in Canada, we're in all the countries across Europe. So it's very, very exciting. And these people from these different countries bring a different feeling about the whiskey to us. Because remember that if we are sitting in a tasting panel in Edinburgh with 6 Scotsmen round the table, talking about the flavour we get in Tunnock's caramel wafers, you know, then obviously that might not mean something to somebody in Singapore, and they will bring their own kind of taste to it. So, for example, if we describe in broad terms, a whiskey is fruity, there's about 2,000 fruits in the world.
Yeah.
So different countries, different people will have a different perception of what that fruitiness is. So it's been wonderful experience, really.
Yeah, amazing. And even in Australia, we've seen the whiskey scene and appreciation of whiskey, even on the local scene, has changed so much in the last, even in the last 10 years. It has exploded in Australia as well. I can imagine even more so in the UK.
Yes.
Lachlan says in the comment section, I want a society pillow. There you go. There's the old monogram and a pillow.
Yes, that's right. And what about a society watch, Lachlan? Do you want a society watch?
He definitely, now that he's seen that, he will. Don't worry.
A society shirt. I'm not showing you my underwear.
No, we do have society t-shirts, as our members know, but and we've got some new ones in production at the moment, but I'm afraid no pillows or watches just yet, and no special John McCheyne edition undies. So Tim asks, it's a question for you here, John. Tim asks, has the further inclusion of women changed whiskey cultures?
Has it changed whiskey cultures? I think what it's done is you have it's a very big generalization, but women tend to have great noses, much better than men sometimes. And some of the imagination and the aromas and flavors they bring are very powerful in the tasting notes. One of our ladies, Annabelle Meikle, who worked with us for years, is now president of the Keepers of the Quaich, you know, and we've got women who started with the society now doing big jobs in different places within the whiskey world. So I think that the tastings are different. The tastings, I think now, because there's more women there, just have a different kind of atmosphere, I think. The obvious things don't happen that would happen perhaps in an all-male environment. But I think that I think there's a different feel to it now. I haven't really put my finger on it more than that.
And it's obviously a change in palate, but it's also a change in, I guess, I mean, as you said, it's changed the society, and it's the diversity of casks and diversity of people that we see at the society is broadly opened up there.
We used to be amazed. I'm probably most often in SMWS London venue, and we used to be amazed in that venue if a girl ever came in and introduced her male partner to whiskey, being the women being the knowledgeable one. Now we are not surprised at all. It happens all the time. And the other strange thing is that some people are very, sometimes, critical of girl. How could you? What do you know about whiskey? How could you possibly like peated whiskey and all that? And that's just nonsense these days. You know, women have got as broad a palate spectrum as men, and are as keen to know as much about whiskey as men. And the other thing is that this culture of connoisseurship I referred to, it's not just whiskey, you know. Sometimes they're becoming the beginning of whiskey journey as part of an overall portfolio of knowledge of drinks. So our cognac and Armagnac and the other rum, they go down very well too, because the younger people are probably more likely to be involved in that culture of connoisseurship and want to try different drinks and understand why the different flavors arise, which gives us a great opportunity in society to take them through that journey and explain all that in a hopefully a fun and entertaining way.
Yeah, it's always the fun that I'm always interested at our events, and I think that's one of the things that they're always fun and exciting events that the society hosts, whether it be in the UK, whether it be in Australia, and that's kind of yes, you want to learn something along the way and actually absorb what's going on, but at the same time, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot about meeting other members and having that whiskey club experience, and even if we don't have a venue.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, Matt. The whole idea of the members coming together and discovering the new whiskies every month together is one of the best things about the society, and that is a regular occurrence every week in London venue, and I'm sure in the Edinburgh venues and the Glasgow venue will be like that too.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess there's two things about whiskey. There's the appreciating, and there's the enjoying. And once all of that swirling and sniffing and sipping and maybe writing notes is over, when you've done that, then just sit back and enjoy the whiskey, enjoy the conversation, enjoy the discussion, enjoy the environment, let the flavors relax into your limbic system and create a longer term memory with a bit of luck.
Matt Wooler says it's a sense of extended family. Couldn't agree more.
Yes.
And David Carolyn Taylor asks, of all the whiskies in the cabinet, why is there a lone waving cat there?
That's my wife's a little thing she brought over from a holiday we had in Asia. I don't know what it's supposed to represent.
And Alex Moore says, here, and second that. And there's another question here from Nick Husek who asks, of all the society branches around the world, why is Australia your favorite?
Well, remember, well, for a start, I like the people in Australia and I like the people all around the world too. The very first country I ever visited as an SMWS global ambassador was Denmark. And I'm very fond of Denmark. And I'm sure I'm going to have exactly the same feeling once I eventually make it to Australia.
Yeah.
I actually sent Matt a recording a few weeks ago. I was talking to Matt on this kind of thing, and he was talking about Argyll, and he said Argyll. Remember, Matt?
Argyll.
You said Argyll. You probably would be.
That's right, I did. I said Argyll, didn't I, or something, and it's Argyle.
So I sent Matt a recording of a song called "Always Argyll" by.
That's
Barry.
right, you did.
And the song is actually about someone emigrating from Scotland to Australia and leaving home behind. It's quite an emotional song.
Well, I learnt my lesson. Don't worry. Scott Mansfield has said, please come to Brisbane. Okay, yep. And Rob Akers says, is that like heresy? Because I said heresy wrong the other night, and people have decided to pull me up. I said instead of saying heresy, I said heresy, and I've been pulled up on that at least a dozen times now. That's just great, because referring to the heresy bottlings are like
sure.
Excellent. Some great comments coming through, and a few elsewhere as well. Occupational hazard, and as you do, and a big hello from Jeff Darby. Lots of Australian members tuning in.
Hey guys.
So moving on to the next part. I just in terms of I wanted to ask you sort of like what your role looks like at the moment, and what it typically looks like, and what it looks like in Corona times, if we want to call it that.
Sure. Well, apart from the tastings and events, which is obviously the main part of it, I'm often involved in business development ideas and making projects.
Yeah. We've got some feedback coming through. Sorry, go ahead.
projects to make things look better for the members, to find ways of making it more entertaining for members, to increase the interaction. I was involved in all of that kind of stuff, and I was in a meeting about exactly that yesterday around the world. But in this, normally in the course of a month, I'll probably have a dozen more meetings in London with other whiskey folk who we might be looking to collaborate with on something or other. You know, there's lots, or maybe a new distiller whom I know and I want to get introduced to the society and talk about casks. That's going on all the time, actually. But in these times, I'm basically doing things like I've got a corporate tasting on Friday evening for a big international company based in Edinburgh. I've got meetings like this. I've got another meeting later on today with some of the people in Edinburgh. I've got a tasting tonight where I'm just a guest with another whiskey company. I've done a few tastings with whiskey clubs I'm a member of. So apart from that, I'm trying to do a lot of reading, catching up and stuff, which I've always wanted to sort of read. You know, I'm tidying things and files, which I've always wanted to do. And just I'm trying to get out a bit every day for a bit of fresh air as well. We're allowed out once for exercise, you know, and so apart from that, same as everybody else, I think.
Yeah. Great question here from Alex Moores, who says, John, do you think the growth of the society membership will lead to other big changes from the origins of the society, such as the vatted malts, for example? Will there be perhaps more heretical behaviour?
Now, this is interesting, Alex, because if people don't know the history, we were an independent company until 2004. And Glenmorangie bought us in 2004. And about 5 minutes later, Louis Vuitton, Moët Hennessy bought Glenmorangie. So we're actually owned by the French until 2015, where so for 5 years we're back and we're independent again, owned by independent investors and a management team. So in that 5 years, we've actually changed a lot of things, because when we were owned by Glenmorangie, we had access to a lot of their stocks in the warehouse. And I guess that made us fairly confident that we could get different types of casks anytime. When we became independent again, it meant we had to rebuild our relationships with all these other whiskey companies and distilleries to get that flow coming. And you'll have seen lots of distilleries being bottled in the last 3 or 4 years that hadn't been bottled by us for years. So
that was a remark I made at one of our tastings actually last year, because we started seeing casks come through from distillery codes that are not new codes,
yes,
but are casks that we haven't seen codes from those distilleries in a long time, like 80 and like even just the other night I opened 80.10. It's like a 10th ever cask from a distillery that we probably bottled .1 back in 84, 85 or something. But you know, it's cool to see the resurgence of codes of distilleries that we otherwise didn't have access to.
That and that comes really from the Glenmorangie connection, which probably made things too easy for us. But Glenmorangie didn't have all these distilleries in their warehouse, so we couldn't get access to them. And we kind of perhaps grew out of the habit of just keeping these relationships going. And now we've worked hard to do that. Kai and Ewan have done a tremendous job. And we're going to see, and as we move into the future, lots more of these bottlings from lesser known distilleries that we hadn't bottled for a while. We're going to see bottlings from distilleries around the world. You know, if you look at the last 12 or 13 bottles, most of them have been non-Scotch. You know, so, but we will be giving our members in the future the chance to sample lots of these new distilleries, which have started up in recent years, and the whiskey is growing, the spirit is growing into maturity. There's going to be a fantastic amount. I mean, I reckoned we would get to 150, bottling 150 by the end of this year, because of what's happening and everything, maybe next year now. But there's going to be a constant moving forward of that. We reckon in our warehouse, we have casks maturing from about 140 different distilleries.
Mm.
And when you look at the type of cask, the treatment of the cask, the previous incumbent of the cask, all of those combinations, we have about between 60 and 70 different types of cask warehouse. So lots of different flavors to play with and experiment with and enjoy over the years.
Which probably leads into the next question, which was Jared Hockey asks, does SMWS manage their own casks? And yes, they do, Jared. And do they buy them direct once they think they're ready with particular distilleries? If they manage their own, however, what's the oldest vintage cask you currently have maturing?
Okay. First of all, let me just jump back a bit. I don't think I answered Alex's question about vatting malts.
Oh, will there be more heretical behaviour? Yeah.
Yeah. Alex, people tend to think that this is a relatively new thing, this finishing or extra maturation. We've actually been doing that since 1991. And actually, I was just reading a newsletter last night from the year 2000 when somebody was interviewing the then spirits manager, SMWS, and she, Kate Brown, was talking about exactly that in 2000. It's not a new thing.
I think he also means with vatted malts as well, perhaps more things like big swirls and.
Oh, sorry, is that what you meant, Alex? Oh, yeah. I think
he could also mean that kind of. He could also mean finishing and other things. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Alex. Certainly, the vatting will continue because it's been so popular, and it gives us the opportunity to experiment and provide flavors that otherwise wouldn't be available to our members.
And that's kind of what.
As far as the oldest cask is concerned, Matt, I'm not quite sure what that would be. You know, I mean, all I can say is that there's a whole range of ages. There's some spirit maturing in our warehouse, which is new spirit, you know, which isn't whiskey yet, right up to the stage where we'll have very old casks in there still to be bottled. You've seen some of the very, very old casks in recent years, and that we will be continuing that program. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. Squire Ross asks, are there any plans to bottle an Aussie distillery in the future? And I don't think that's a John question, but if I can just jump in and say yes, there is, and yes, there's progress and wheels in motion there. Which I know I've said a version of that answer a number of times, but John, if you want to add anything there, but otherwise I can jump to the next question.
No. I know that Edinburgh and you guys are on that, Matt. So nothing more for me to say.
Yeah, awesome. Rob asks, any more society liqueurs?
Oh, the cures. That was an interesting one. Do you actually remember those, Rob?
Yeah, I think he tasted the Island Liqueur 4 at one of our recent.
Right. Okay. We get loads and loads of questions about this over the years about these liqueurs, and it was something which we did, and I don't think we'll repeat it. I don't think it was the most successful thing we ever did. There was also, I don't know if you know, Rob, but once upon a time we tried maturing whiskey in a Tabasco cask.
Hot Scotch.
Hot Scotch. I don't think the SWA would have approved it very much if they'd known we were doing it. But it turned out to be so ridiculously fiery that we made it into a sauce, hot Scotch, to be used in food. But I don't think we're going to be doing more liqueurs. No, that was an idea that came from a conversation between Richard Gordon, our MD at the time, and the MD of Drambuie, who said that he would put it together for us.
Yeah, it's a cool little curio though, a cool little society curio. If you do have one of those liqueurs there in your cabinet. Yeah. And a member who is quite enamored with your genuine accent has asked you to please pronunciate the words Aberlour and Orthrisk.
Okay, Aberlour.
There you go.
Orthrisk.
Ah, there you go.
I think it's listen, guys, if you want a bit of fun, there's an actor called Brian Cox, COX, right? Now, Brian has got a series of videos on YouTube. If you put in Brian Cox whiskey, there's dozens and dozens of these videos, 10-second videos, where he's sitting in a big armchair with a glass by his side, and he picks up the glass, sniffs it and sips it, and says the name of the distillery. So if you want to try and test how to say a particular distillery, try that. That's quite good fun, actually. He gets one or two wrong, I think.
I think there is actually one that he does get wrong, and I've seen that one. I can't remember which one it was though.
Yeah. I think he says Glengarry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was wondering if it was that one or Brooklady or something.
But the other whiskey, which I find has got a dozen different pronunciations depending on who's saying it, is Lechig. So the peated one from Tobermory. It's actually spelled Ledaig. So it looks like Ledig on the page. So
yeah. Some great questions coming in here, which I'm going to jump to. Nick Husick asks, where are the SMWS warehouses? I'm not planning on breaking in, I promise.
Well, I'll tell you what, as a Glaswegian, we had two venues in Edinburgh and one in London. For 36 years, it took us to get a venue in Glasgow, and it only opened a few months ago. But I'm pleased to say our warehouse is in Glasgow, in a place called Hillington. And it's actually very close to the Glasgow Distillery Company. Same kind of area.
Yeah, amazing. So I'll get to Scott's question in a moment because that's kind of a big one. But a couple of comments. James Bunton says, spicy. Thanks, James. And Neil Aitken says, you're up early this morning, John. And Neil works for the SMWS, for those who want to know. And Madeline Schmoll says there's a great article coming up about distillery names and pronunciations in the next issue of Unfiltered.
Good.
And Alex Darlenberg is just likes the way you say the word whiskey, let alone all the distillery names.
Well, have you ever heard the story about Scotch is the only drink in the world that you can ask for anywhere in the world by reference to nation alone. You can ask for a Scotch anywhere in the world and people know what you mean. But so we're the home of whiskey. But some people say it was invented in Ireland, okay? And Ireland brought it over to us. So when they brought it over, we had a little meeting to see what it was all about. And after a confab, we decided two things. We're going to stop that triple distillation nonsense, and we're going to drop the letter E in the word. They spell it Whiskey. And the reason in Scotland we dropped the E is that in Scotland, we just happen to believe that extra vowels take up too much drinking time.
I can't argue with that. Scott Mansfield says, with developments in tracking technology like blockchain, etc., can you see a day when cask information goes further than the day of distillation? Example, distillery of origin or the cask or even the malt. For example, Waterford and Brooklady identifying which farm malt came from.
Yes, I can. I mean, the whole thing about whiskey is partly the myth and the magic. There's so many things that we still cannot explain. I remember Bill Lumsden of Glenmorangie telling me 10 years ago, he was talking about the developments in whiskey, particularly in casks. And I said, it sounds as if you know it all now in terms of the industry. And he said, you know, John, we don't even know half of it. We don't even know where complete flavour comes from, the difference from one cask to another, and all the rest of it.
And that's Dr. Bill. That's someone who would know more than most. Yeah.
That's Dr. Bill. I believe you me that there's experiments going on all the time at Diageo, the Scotch Whisky Research Institute, to try and answer all of these questions. And as technology develops, blockchain, as you mentioned, there is no doubt that someone somewhere will be saying, let's see if we can have an efficient system of cask tracking. So I wouldn't be surprised to see that. Don't know if I'll be around, but I think it may happen.
Yeah, okay. Jared says, a Glaswegian, hey, I'd like to meet you at the Bon Accord one day for a dram. I'll get in touch and we'll have a big session. Last time we were there, like pinballs in a pinball machine off the walls.
The Bon Accord is my favourite bar in the world. Yeah. I love that bar and those people. And a good friend of Paul and I chat about football all the time and whiskey, of course. So I'd be delighted to meet you there when I'm in Glasgow. That's always my second home.
There you go. So Jared, he's more than happy to have a dram with you, a dram and a pint, I'm sure. And Ross Blaney just says, I just cracked.
Tell me, PM me or email me or something.
Yeah. No, you're tagged in it. He'll be able to find you.
Okay.
And Ross says, Ross Blaney from Balvenie says he just cracked that 76.100, lads. It's a bit of a belter.
Good stuff.
Good stuff indeed.
Always 76 is always go down very, very well.
In terms of like your journey in whiskey as well, in terms of what you've learned over the years and have grown with, have there been any sort of even more recent, any sort of like whiskey epiphanies or things that you've learned that you thought for me, I'm always learning more. And that's why, has there been something recently, even for someone who's been in the game as long as you have? That you still
I've got a video here at home, Matt, and it's called The Myth and the Magic. And it was made about 15 years ago. And it's the story of Scotch and about what we know and what we don't know. Even in 15 years, we're starting to learn so much more. I've been to the Isla Whiskey Academy as a guest for 4 of the last 5 years. And I've learned stuff there about yeast development, about water, about environment. Terroir is a big question. Is there terroir in whiskey or not? So I don't know if there's been one single epiphany. Perhaps one of the things I find interesting is that how good the whiskey can be from outside Scotland. You know, I've tasted some whiskies from around the world, of course, as we all have, and I'm very surprised by some of the quality. I'm also very surprised, for example, at the lack of regulation in some countries about what actually can go into a bottle.
Japan, worse.
Japan. And Stefan Van Eycken writes about that quite often. So I think that from my position, I would say that I still think Scotch is the home of whiskey. I think that we have the best control and regulation and quality and history and culture, but it's interesting to see what's happening around the world too.
And on the other flip side of that, where do you see the next sort of 10 years in terms of whiskey then? As you said, I mean, even 10 years ago, the whiskey industry has changed so much. If you look at 2007 to 2009, or that sort of when you first started with the society, and the society's changed a lot, but so has whiskey. The number of distilleries, of course, the diversity of casks. What do you see as the next 10?
What I find interesting, Matt, I don't know what the figures are in Australia, but over here, in the 18 to 25-year-old age group, there's about 30% of them don't drink alcohol at all. Been rammed into them at school, how dangerous it is, and they're trying to lead healthy lifestyles. And obviously, as the kids come out of school, then that percentage is only going to increase, you know? So I'm just wondering, you know, who's going to drink all of the gin and all of the Scotch? But I think what's happening is that I think that the kids who are enjoying alcohol, many of them are our members at that age, are drinking less, drink better, to use that old cliche. They're experimenting with different flavors and stuff. And I really think the way of the future is going to be whiskey as a premier type experience. You know, it's going to be, people are going to understand the different flavors, where they arise and all of that. I cannot help but think, though, of all of the craft distilleries that are appearing here and all over, how can they all find their place? And I think eventually there will be a bit of a shakeout. You know, it's happened with some craft breweries already and that the big boys have bought some of them out. And I can see that happening in the whiskey industry as well. But I think that with the growth of the enjoyment of Scotch around the world, I think that will be the base for our development and growth in the next 10 years.
No, that's a really interesting point. I think we're seeing, obviously not from the society, but we see that trend as well, even locally, of like zero proof spirits, zero proof gin.
Yes.
And that's probably that leading on from there.
I also think, Matt, as society, we make whiskey. We're not just bottlers. We make whiskey by working with the casks and working with distilleries and stuff. And I think you're going to see from the society in the years to come a lot more innovation and ways that we can create flavors in our bottlings for our members. I've got a meeting this afternoon talking to the master distiller from Holyrood Distillery, one of the new craft distilleries in Edinburgh. And he's just one of a whole range of people who we'll be working with to develop flavors for the future. Yeah,
amazing. We are seeing it's quite an exciting research, new wave of distilleries that are, seeing like the Holyrood and the Port of Leith and the Ballindelloch and all those kind of places that are, I think it's really exciting. There's still new distilleries even opening up in Scotland. I mean, there's obviously lots of new world distilleries opening up across the United States, Australia, Japan, etc. But seeing new ones open up in Scotland is always very exciting as well.
Yes.
Julia Megan says, best full stop accent full stop ever. So got another fan. So that's fantastic. And
tell you what, you should have heard that 30 years ago before I moved to England.
It was a proper thick Glaswegian accent. And then Joel says, makes a very good point about the big boys buying out the small distilleries eventually. That does happen. A question through our YouTube channel was, who are your whiskey heroes?
Who are my whiskey heroes? My biggest whiskey hero, without a shadow of a doubt, is Jim McCheyne from Islay. I just think
you'll know him as many of our listeners and viewers will know him as the ex Brooklady and maybe even ex Bemore.
Yes. And Bemore Brooklady then helped harden the whole on Islay get set up. He has his own bottling business now called the Cask Whisperer. He called it that because he was known to be wandering around the warehouse when he was younger, whispering to casks, asking them how they were doing and all that. So Jim McCheyne is just a legend. He has so many fantastic stories. He's had such a remarkable life. He's promoted Scotland and Scotch all around the world. You know, there's a slight chance, I'm really hoping, that maybe we'll be able to do something with him later in the year. But there's lots of other whiskey people who, you know, I look up to and respect and have learned from. I think Jim's the big one.
Yeah, amazing. Now, we had the opportunity to do a few events with Jim over the years in Australia, and it's an absolute entertaining evening when you get a moment with Jim. But he's still coming out to Australia, I think, because he's doing a lot of work with Byron Bay Distillery. As a distillery, I think it was Byron Bay Distillery. I'm going to get the name of it wrong off the top of my head, but he's been helping out with the spirit development for them.
Sure. He does, at the end of his tastings, he does that Scotland toast.
Yeah, the foot on the table and the
Highland toast, he calls it. And it's just amazing thing. It's fantastic. Yeah.
Oh, I know.
He also calls whiskey the blood of Scotland, you know?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we've had some really good questions through and a great chat tonight. I really appreciate you taking the time, John, and learning a bit more about who you are and what you do.
Sure.
Some of your stories behind it all. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thanks to everyone who tuned in and has been a part of the discussion and asked some great questions. One last one here from Nick Huzek. He asks, John, what's your favorite flavor profile? I think I could probably guess it, but you go ahead, John.
My favorite profile is peaty. And I don't mind. I tell you what, peaty and heavily peated, because I think sometimes as you get older, and I'm about 42 now, you know.
If you believe that, you believe anything.
It gets more difficult to discern the smoky bit that I like and the lightly peated stuff. So I would say peated and heavily peated.
Awesome. And we do have some awesome peated and heavily peated whiskies coming through for the May outturn, of course, everyone, which is going to be a ripper of a festival outturn for everyone who's a member in Australia.
Outside the peated ones, I like spicy and dry.
Yeah.
I like spicy and dry.
There was a great discussion a few nights back about how that is probably one of the most underrated flavor profiles in the society. There's savory notes that you get out of those casks are fantastic. Thank you everyone for all the great questions. Thank you for sharing your time with us, John, and I will catch up with you again. I'd love to have you on again if that's okay.
Oh, fantastic. Bye folks. Great to talk to you.
And we'll catch you all got a bug. I'll catch you all later on. Thank you everyone.
Bye-bye everyone. Cheers.